On February 6, 2014, in Rana, Norway, 5 Finnish men, Känkänen, Patrik Grönqvist, Jari Huotarinen, Vesa Rantanen, and Jari U, prepared for an extremely risky cave dive. Their destination was the Pluragrotta cave, an underwater maze linked to the Tragically dry cave. The dive was said to be dangerously deep, so deep that only the most experienced and daring divers would even consider. The cave's dark passages were ahead, promising both the thrill of exploration and the ever-present threat of disaster. Little did they know what their thrilling exploration would lead to, and then what actually happened underwater? To discover the whole story, watch the video till the end. Before their dive on 6th of February 2014, Kai and Patrik had already been to Pluragrotta cave. At that time, their objective was the same, to find underwater passages. Luckily, they managed to complete a traverse. A traverse, in context of diving, refers to the act of passing through an underwater cave, tunnel, or a passageway by entering at one point and exiting at another. This achievement served as a confidence booster for both these divers, and thus they planned another dive. But here's a twist. This time they planned to dive in from the opposite end, finding their way out from the first opening. And this time they had 3 new partners, making a total of 5 divers. Preparations for the dive. The cave system reaches incredible depths, with some sections plunging over 426 feet below the surface, for which they had to keep modern and reliable equipment with them. Nevertheless, that cave still had to offer significant challenges due to low visibility, narrow passages, and a maze-like structure. The 5 men traveled in Jari Huotarinen's van, towing a trailer packed with gear, a snowmobile, underwater scooters, dozens of diving cylinders, and other smaller tools. The road was slippery and covered with snow. During their 15-hour drive through Finland, Sweden, and Norway, they constantly reviewed their plan, covering every detail to ensure their safety. The plan was to split into 2 teams, diving 2 hours apart to minimize sediment disturbance and maintain clear water. The entire dive was expected to take 5 hours if everything went smoothly. To reach the cave entrance, they had to dive under the frozen Plura lake, and for that, they had to cut through thick ice on surface of lake. While Kai, Vesa, and Jari U took equipment to the Tragically cave, Patrik used a chainsaw to cut a triangular hole in the ice. Despite the freezing temperatures and late start, preparations went smoothly. In a short time, Patrik broke through the ice layer, revealing some crystal clear water beneath. As they suited up and checked their equipment, they exchanged a few words, and then Huotarinen responded with a silent hand gesture, signaling that it was time to dive. And just like that, the first set of 2 divers started off their journey in the absence of their 3 fellow divers. The 2 divers underwater. Patrik and Huotarinen fired up their underwater scooters, essential for conserving energy at such depths and freezing temperatures. As Patrik and Huotarinen reached the deepest part of the cave, they powered down their scooters. Huotarinen wanted to take in the cave's beauty. Patrik and Huotarinen practiced switching to their bailout rebreathers at depth, with everything going as planned so far. However, as they began their ascent, trouble appeared. Patrik ascended first through a narrow section, making a 90-degree turn, but he couldn't see Huotarinen's flashlight. Suddenly, he saw Huotarinen's light waving up and down, a terrifying sign of distress. Patrik's heart raced as he rushed back to find his partner. Huotarinen demanded that Patrik remove one of his large bailout cylinders, which was blocking his path. Patrik quickly detached the tank and moved his scooter to clear the way, but couldn't understand why Huotarinen was so frantic. Then he noticed Huotarinen's scooter cord stuck between 2 rocks. Clearing it was simple, but the panic in Huotarinen's voice hinted at deeper trouble. Despite being freed from the rock, Huotarinen continued to panic, shouting for the bailout gas. He switched between his rebreather and the bailout gas several times, but soon he stopped switching and wasn't breathing through anything at all. Panicked, Patrik placed a regulator over Huotarinen's mouth and pressed the purge button. Unfortunately, Huotarinen inhaled water instead of air, sealing his fate. Patrik knew his friend was gone. He had to ascend, but his dive computer showed an extended decompression time of over 400 minutes, more than 7 hours before he could safely surface. Each minute at depth added significant decompression time. He had no choice but to leave Huotarinen behind and begin his ascent, calculating his slim chances of survival. The path back was blocked, and the bailout gas was stuck with Huotarinen's body. Patrik's survival depended on careful, calculated actions amidst the overwhelming darkness and despair. The second set of divers begin their dive. Kai, Vesa, and Jari U started their dive, descending one by one beneath the ice towards the Steinagol Flagade cave. It was a little past 2 p.m. Despite their meticulous preparations, Vesa wanted to bring extra cylinders, just in case. Kai warned him that he wouldn't fit through the narrow passages with the extra cylinders, so Kai carried one of them to help out. The second group moved swiftly through the cave system, reaching the deepest section in under an hour. Kai's prediction came true when Vesa had to remove his cylinders to squeeze through a tight spot. As they neared the ascent point, Vesa approached a 90-degree turn and froze. A sharp beeping sound echoed through the depths. It was the distress signal from a failed breathing apparatus. Vesa tried not to look at Huotarinen's lifeless body blocking the only path forward. Forcing himself to stay calm, he removed more gear to fit through the narrow passage. Vesa, through his adrenaline-fueled emotions, told Jari that Huotarinen was dead. When Kai reached the narrow passage, the situation escalated. Kai didn't know what was happening, only that Jari U showed signs of extreme distress. Kai tried to calm him, but Jari U was in a panic-induced hysteria, switching frantically between his bailout gas and his closed regulator system. Kai realized that if Jari U didn't calm down, he would kill himself. But his efforts were in vain. Jari U soon died. Kai, hardening his mind, swam further to assess the situation. He found Vesa struggling to get around Huotarinen's body and through the passage. Vesa was breathing heavily, trying to squeeze through. Faced with another difficult decision, Kai had to consider Vesa's odds of survival. With time running out, Kai decided Vesa was unlikely to make it and turned back. With their dive turning into a disaster, Kai calculated his own chances of survival. He had 2 rebreathers but little oxygen left. The bailout gas was meant for descending, not ascending. He needed to start his decompression stops at around 100 meters, but without oxygen reserves, he wouldn't last long enough. Meanwhile, Patrik was making his decompression stops, slowly ascending to the dry cave, consumed by thoughts of despair and guilt. Though a fair distance behind, Vesa was making his own decompression stops. On the other side of the cave, Kai felt responsible for the group. He had already skipped a few decompression stops, and the freezing waters were unforgiving. He kept warm by swimming, but his underwater scooter gave out, significantly slowing his progress. Kai estimated he could make it to the entrance from the air chamber in 15 minutes, but without the scooter it took 45. Both of his surviving companions were also ascending too quickly. They knew it was only a matter of time before the symptoms of decompression, sickness, aching, prickling, and numbness set in. They had covered 400 meters while submerged at over 100 meters. Kai, twice as much. Exhausted and with the depleting oxygen and rebreather filters, none of them could manage the required decompression stops any longer. Who made it out alive? When Patrik had lost all hope for his team, he saw something unbelievable. He saw Vesa's headlamp through the water below him. Feeling a gush of strength, Patrik completed the remaining decompression stops. He surfaced around 9 p.m., about 90 minutes ahead of schedule. Sitting in the dry cave, he waited for Vesa. At 3 meters, Vesa's arms started to ache. Once he joined Patrik in the dry cave, his right knee began to throb with pain. Around 1:30 a.m., Kai emerged from the cave entrance to the pond in pitch-black darkness, expecting to see the hole they had cut. To his horror, it was gone. He shone his light at the ice above him and began searching for the hole. Although he knew its location, he couldn't find it. Eventually, Kai spotted the hole concealed beneath a thin layer of ice about 1 centimeter thick. After breaking through, he carefully placed his gear on the frozen surface and climbed out of the water. There was no sign of anyone else. At that moment, Kai thought he was the only survivor. At the same time, Patrik and Vesa had returned to the farm to change into dry clothes and call the authorities. There was still no sign of Kai, and they feared he had met the same grim fate. Then, after 2 a.m., they noticed a light on in the van. Approaching it, they were relieved and overjoyed to see that Kai had made it. Recovering the dead bodies. The tragic news of the deaths of 2 Finnish divers spread rapidly. Local authorities faced the daunting task of retrieving the bodies from the cave. They called on 3 seasoned British divers for the operation. However, the mission to recover Huotarinen and Jari U proved too dangerous. Officials decided to leave them in the cave, imposing a diving ban and sealing off the area. With the help of many friends and extensive preparation, Patrik and Sami Pekaranian finally succeeded in bringing back the bodies of Huotarinen and Jari U to the surface. And that is all about our today's video. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and make sure you have subscribed to our channel for more in-cave and frightening dive experiences.